Some people like myself know that the 1999 remake of The Mummy is a cinematic masterpiece, but this movie that turned out to be perfect could have been very different in more ways than people realize. So anyway, this is how the first remake of The Mummy could have been different and the reasons why it did not happen. But before I go any further, I've got a special guest star who's got something special to say.
Hi Tyler, this is Patricia Velasquez from The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. I played Anouk Sunemun. I also played Mila. Some of my favorite memories. I have so many wonderful memories about The Mummy. I mean that movie just came out of a general meeting that I had with the casting director at Universal Studios, and then next thing, I'm flying to London to work in this massive movie. I didn't even know the movie was this big when I shot it. Until I got there. Once I got to the studio, I was like, wow, I can't believe it. One memory that sticks out to me was the preparation for the fight scenes. We weren't supposed to do those fights. That's why we have the masks on. And the reason why, when Rachel and I started preparing and started rehearsing, we got into it and we became very competitive. That's why we ended up doing the fight, and that's why you see that we take our mask off halfway through the fight, is because now I said, well, you have the actors playing it, just make sure you see their faces, right? And the only thing I didn't do was the backflip. Also, when we went to shoot The Mummy Returns, it was the same crew, and we went to Morocco, and it was such a spectacular place. Also, I remember very much being and staying in London, and my mom was with me, and Brendan was so incredibly kind to my mom. That always I remember that with a lot of warmth in my heart. And just that movie really it means a lot to me that you're a fan, because this industry sometimes goes up, sometimes go down, and the fact that you are a fan. Fortunately, I've had a really wonderful career, but if there is ever a moment where I feel a little bit, I will think of you, Tyler, and I'm grateful that you love our work and that you love the Mummy movies. I'll send you a big, big hug from Los Angeles, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Happy 25th anniversary to the Mummy. Wow, I can't believe so much time has passed.
And those movies are covered in my book 100 Years of Universal Monster Movies. Order your copy today, available in print and digital. Now back to the video. By the 1980s, Universal decided to remake The Mummy. In 1987, George Romero began working on a script for the movie, then a year later, Abbie Bernstein came in to help. Bernstein wrote a story that centered around a religious Egyptian orb that the mummy was buried with that could dissolve organic matter. In the current day setting, scientists run experiments on the mummy, but they accidentally resurrect the character, in which the mummy rips apart people just to get the orb. The protagonist of the story, who's a lab technician that survives, runs away with the orb. He eventually finds out that the increasingly powerful mummy wants the orb because he wants to use it to kill everybody on Earth by tossing it into the ocean when it rains. Bernstein's script was considered by the producers to be overly violent as it was fast-paced, and that lacked a romantic aspect. A year later, Romero left the project. Producers James Jacks and Sean Daniel then looked to Clive Barker, who wrote a story treatment in 1990, and then Mick Garris writing his screenplay a year later that was in sync with Barker's idea. Mainly taking place in Beverly Hills in a contemporary setting, an Egyptian tomb was brought back from Egypt to a museum where it suggested throughout the story that the ancient Egyptians were in contact with aliens. Yes, you heard right. A worker there was secretly a cultist trying to resurrect the mummies at his workplace, but when the higher-ups of the studio read the script, it was considered too outlandish for them. You think? As well as it being too violent like what Bernstein had written. What also did not help was that the makeup designs of the mummy had aspects of sadomasochism that turned the producers off. With Barker gone, Garris stuck around to direct instead. Then Romero returned as a writer, along with Alan Ormsby in 1993. Ormsby's mummy would have had Imhotep as a prince with romantic ambitions for a princess, and communicates with a rabbi character because Hebrew is the only language he understands. But when he gets to Death Valley, where a pyramid is hidden underground, he becomes heartbroken to find out that the woman he loved did not love him. Then came along Joe Dante. Garris had lost favor since his recent movie Sleepwalkers was seen as a disappointment. When Dante arrived to direct, he wanted the story to take place in the contemporary setting, along with aspects that impress the studio, such as elements of romance and scarabæels that pose an additional threat aside from the mummy. Rick Baker was attached by doing some of the makeup effects of the movie while having a copy of the script to assist him with the details, and with writer John Sayles, who was brought in to rewrite the script. But Dante hit a roadblock with studio executives Tom Pollock and Sidney Sheinberg, who objected to the idea of having a mummy character limping around in bandages, and the production budget being raised to over $15 million. Then Romero came back into the fray in 1994, with Garris also returning in 1995. But the return of Romero would be brief since he would depart for a third and final time because of his busy schedule. If he was not too busy to direct it, his idea would have taken place in the contemporary setting, but it would have been about a female archaeologist named Helen Grover who discovers a mummy's tomb. This movie also would have been connected to the Karras-related movies, with Imhotep using Karras to do his dirty work by having him kill those who plundered his tomb. Now with Garris back on to direct, his idea was getting close to getting the green light. Filming would take place in British Columbia to double for ancient Egypt, with Bill Corso being brought on as an art director and Steve Johnson doing the effects. But before Sheinberg left the studio, he believed that the remake was still going over budget. But then it fell apart when Sheinberg could not find another writer to come in to rewrite it. The final nail in the coffin was failing to get a name-worthy director that would draw in people since Garris was not a household name. Their other option was replacing Garris with Wes Craven, but he passed from a lack of interest. By 1996, Kevin Jarre wrote a story that was like the movie that would eventually get made. The major difference was that Jarre's script was far darker and edgier. The characters who were brother and sister in the movie would instead be an engaged couple. Rick was named Brian, and they would eventually go back to New York City after spending time in Egypt. So which story idea do you think sounded best? Personally, I'm happy how the movie turned out, and I'm so grateful for the movie that we got. So anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.